Hi there. On a good day, when things are going really well, I know who's going to turn up. I know how I'm going to turn up, and I know how things are likely to roll out. I can kind of look at my diary and figure I've got these meetings and these meetings and this to do and this to do. And I know if things are going to go smoothly, that this is who I'm going to be. This is what my identity that day is likely to be. And I bet that you do too. But the real question is this one: who actually shows up when you are really tired, when you didn't sleep well last night, when something that was going on in your family or because of work woke you a whole lot, when you're feeling absolutely stretched to the max and like you've got no energy left to give anything, when you're feeling as though you're under pressure, and when you feel as though others are watching, not supporting you, but on the sideline, almost judging you, waiting to see if you're going to trip yourself up. Leadership gets exposed under pressure, under stress. And something that we all need to get on top of is understanding how our leadership shows up in those kind of situations. So today, what I'm going to talk with you about is what's called your emotional shadow. This is almost that dark side, those feelings, those things, those behaviors, those traits that you might not even want to acknowledge. But these are the patterns that surface when your nervous system gets totally overloaded. Not about judging or suppressing our emotions, it's about understanding what they are so that they don't run your leadership show, particularly during times when things are tough. And what we'll be doing is building on last week's leadershipisation. So welcome, welcome. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership and communication coach. I help leaders, executives, managers, business owners to refine their presence and their decision making so that their authority absolutely amplifies their influence in their team, in their organization, and in their industry. And I am here live most every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which currently is 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Look, being triggered doesn't make you a bad leader. Not understanding what triggers you, what takes over when you are triggered, does make you a bad leader. So, what we're going to do today is look deeper than that mental fitness, that emotional fitness that we talked about last week, so that we can check out and understand those unconscious behaviors that emerge and shape how others experience you, particularly when you're under pressure. So we've got 4 key points to have a look at. Then what I'll do is give you some practical tools and then some reflection questions for you to go away and to ask yourself. And then we'll summarize what we've covered today. So let's get going. The first point is this: it's important that you know and understand your emotional shadow and how it impacts your leadership. It's not bad leadership, as I said before, because our brain automatically defaults to whatever is going to keep us safe, to what we need to do to survive. So our emotional shadow is that unconscious, that hidden part, those traits, those desires, those emotions that may be deemed to be unacceptable. Things like sadness, anger, fear, anxiety, shame, disgust. And sometimes we don't even want to acknowledge them. And other times we don't like or we don't want to have those kinds of behaviors or traits or emotions attached to us. Why this is important is because when we're under pressure, our emotional shadow or our dark side will step forward. And when it steps forward, we can't always control what happens. Maybe we're going to lose our values because, maybe we're going to lose our sense of calm. Maybe we're going to lose control because these are unintegrated emotional responses that we're talking about. These are the patterns that we learned early. And as I said before, our brain defaults to this because it wants to keep us safe. It wants to give us control and it wants to avoid that discomfort. Just because your brain is defaulting there doesn't mean that it has to make sense. This is your dark side, your emotional shadow. And what happens is that you become worse under pressure. The more emotional we are, the more under pressure we are, the less filter our emotions have, and the more likely we are to make really silly decisions. So that's the first thing. The second one is this: your emotional shadow is a psychological response to your trigger. What happens is that you're triggered, and instead of collaborating, you decide, I need to be controlling this because it's just getting out of hand, or you withdraw and shift back into your office and shut the door instead of maintaining a positive, warm presence for people. You move into justifying every single thing you do or denying things rather than actually communicating with people to get your way through whatever is bothering you. Stress floods your nervous system. And what that does is it reduces your access to logic. It reduces your access to empathy. And it reduces the number of choices that you can actually see as being available to you. Because the emotional shadow is being driven by your brain, taking you to that survival mode. Now, what's important for you to understand is that this isn't a character flaw. This is actually a physiological response. It just happens. However, awareness is the key. So you can't think your way out of a triggered state usually. Once you're in the triggered state, it can be difficult to think your way out of it. You're going to have to regulate your emotions first of all. So obviously, there's much more success if what you're able to do is to become aware of what is triggering you and shut that down early. We'll give you some tips a bit later on for how you can do that. Yeah. The third point is this one: trust, safety, and influence. Trust of you, the feeling that people are safe around you, and your influence as a leader are impacted when you are unable to acknowledge your triggers. We know already that teams react to your energy, to your behavior. And if they don't know what your intention is, if they don't know that you're struggling because you've been triggered and you're out of control or moving fast towards being out of control, then what they're doing is they're going to react automatically to your energy and behavior. And the danger with the emotional shadow is that it's unpredictable. And if all the time what you're doing is allowing your emotional shadow to come through, your dark side to come through, your team are starting to wonder what version of you they're going to get today. Now, I don't know about you, but certainly I have, and many of the clients I've coached have worked with leaders, and they're wondering who's going to turn up today? Like, what's going on in their life that we're getting this version of them day after day after day? And when they don't know, when your team don't know which version is going to turn up today, when they're always sitting in that fight or flight or freeze, what they're doing or what's happening is that we're eroding their psychological safety. And we're also putting a stop to honest communication. So that won't be happening too much more. So it's important, what comes out of this is that it's important that you acknowledge that dark side, because you cannot deal with it unless you're actually prepared to acknowledge it. And that brings us to the fourth point, which is that trigger, an awareness of your triggers, what triggers you, and that emotional shadow, that's a self-leadership skill. It's really important that you understand what those things are. Now, this doesn't mean that you sit around going, I wonder what would trigger me, and make yourself, a huge list of 20 to 30 things. There will be some key things that trigger you. However, recognizing what your body is going through when you are triggered could give you some insight into things that are triggering you that you didn't even know were. But if you've got the skill, the self-leadership skill to recognize it and to call it out, then you're going to be able to respond to it. So we don't need a shopping list of these are all of my triggers. Watch out, everybody. That would not be cool. What's important is that you recognize your triggers and your shadow early so that you can respond to it. It's very hard to eliminate it completely. Your emotional shadow is not likely to go away completely. But if what you can do is actually say either to yourself or out loud, only if it's appropriate though, if what you can do is say, I'm triggered, oh, I need to manage this, or hey guys, I need to take a break, just got to step outside for a few minutes. Or that reaction is not how I want to lead. This is you saying this to yourself, that isn't how I want to lead. Now, in some situations, it would be really appropriate for you to actually say to an entire group that you were communicating with, I need to apologize. That reaction is not how I want to lead. Because that's part of their understanding of you, but it's also part of your growth and recognizing your emotional shadow. When you can pause and call out the trigger or the emotional shadow, that's leadership intelligence in action. You're regulating yourself. And the spin-off will be that the best version of you, a more consistent version of you, will be showing up more often. So let's have a look at 2 tools that you can use that will help you to do this. The first one is one that I call a pause before the power reset. Once you've been triggered or when you've been triggered, pause. Take 3 slow breaths. 3 slow breaths. Drop your shoulders down, because when we get uptight, our shoulders are often up here somewhere. Drop those shoulders down and ask, what would leadership look like right now? Not this default response. What would leadership look like right now? Not this default response. Now, what that does is that it interrupts the shadow. It interrupts the shadow before, and this is what's really important, it interrupts it before it reacts for you. So you're recognizing, I'm a bit stuck here. I'm triggered here. So you're calling it out. What would leadership look like right now? Not default. Try that power reset. I know that it will work for you. The second one is this. It's called pattern reflection mapping. And once the situation is over, this is one, like I've given you one to stop. When you feel triggered, if you've been triggered, this is something for you to have a look back at your pattern. So once you calm down, ask yourself, when I'm under pressure, what do I become? Do I become controlling? Is it avoidant? Do I get really sharp-tongued and loud and a little bit aggressive? Or do I go silent? What is it? Like there will be others. So under pressure, what do I become? And then looking at what situations trigger this the most. And coming back then to look at what emotion am I actually trying to avoid feeling? What emotion am I trying to avoid feeling? So that 3 steps, under pressure, what do I become? What situations trigger that the most? And then what emotion am I actually trying to avoid feeling? And it might be insignificant, it might be undervalued, it might be like people have, read my school reports from 15 years ago and are thinking, oh, she's insignificant. He doesn't do very well. He can't talk in front of groups or whatever it might be. Now, our goal here is to build a pattern awareness, because once we've built this awareness of, okay, under pressure, this is where I go to, what triggers that the most? What emotion am I actually trying to avoid here? Once we've built that pattern awareness, we can then build choice. We can choose how we're going to respond when we feel that potential to be triggered coming up. We can choose how we're going to respond rather than allowing or sitting back feeling out of control when the emotional shadow comes forward and the not so awesome version of us shows up. Okay? I know that you'll find both those really useful. Many of my clients use those, and they are processes that are tried and tested and that I've also used myself. So give them a go. So 2 reflection questions now. These questions are designed for you to think about, to go away, and they're running across the screen so that you can actually write them down and go away and think about them. Look at them, write some responses, come back and look at them again, and do that over a number of days. The first one is this: who do I become under sustained pressure, and how does that version of me impact others? So under pressure, who do I become? Do I become short-tempered? Do my expectations rise out of sight? Do I become impatient? Do I just chuck my hands up in the air and go, this is way too hard? So identify honestly what those things are. And then the second part of the question is, how does this version of me impact others? Now, obviously, one of the things that happens with me is that I get impatient. Hurry up, let's get it doing. I want this happening now. Let's make this stuff happen. And often I have to just take those breaths. Just take a moment to think, is this the way I want this leadership showing up? No, I don't. Breathe, calm down, let go of the trigger and move forward. So honesty here will serve you. It will serve you as part of your leadership growth. And what we know is that we're looking to build our leadership intelligence. The second question here is, what would change in my leadership? What would change in my leadership if I met my shadow with curiosity instead of judgment? What do I mean here? Well, let's say that your shadow seems to be all about fear and anxiety, and that shows up as anger, right? So what it shows up as is anger. The feeling that I'm trying to avoid is fear or anxiety. So what would change if I looked at that fear and that anxiety from the point of curiosity? What are you afraid of? How could you deal with this a little bit differently? Instead of saying to yourself, oh, it really annoys me when I get angry because I've been triggered. It's all their fault, but I should be better at this. I shouldn't be getting triggered. I shouldn't be getting angry. Yeah. If you can look at it and shift your focus so that you're looking at that with curiosity rather than judgment, think about what might change in your leadership. I know that if you're prepared to do that, lots would change in your leadership. I think you'd be much more confident, there'd be greater clarity, and you would be more resilient because you're able to manage those emotions and your mental fitness is much stronger. Okay, there's a lot that we've covered today, and we're going to look at the final one of a three series all about this calm and emotional regulation. We'll be looking at that next week. But the summary and the key takeaways for today are really this: pressure reveals things about us all. How we are, how we show up under pressure is a huge learning opportunity for us. And if what you can do is look at your triggers and that emotional shadow with curiosity, then you'll see them as information. And once you can see them as information, you're really likely to start on a growth journey around building a more emotionally stable, a more mentally fit style of leadership. And also, self-regulation from you is what is going to build that trust. Not only that trust in your team to you, but also you trusting yourself. So, thank you for being here today. Look, if you want to find out more about working with me, whether it be online programs that I have, small groups, one-on-one leadership and communication coaching, or coming in and working with a team of people to improve the way that they're communicating with each other, reach out. It's absolutely no pressure, and we'll put a link below this on the platform that you're watching it on. If you've got any questions and comments, please also put them on the platform. Happy to look at those for you. If you've got topics that you would like to see, then let's get those in there as well, because I'm happy to be able to provide answers to questions that might be going on for you as you're on your leadership and and leadership intelligence journey. Also, hashtag replay if you've watched a replay. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week where we'll be looking at how calm actually equates to power as a leader. Thank you. Bye now.